We'll start streaming in. No pun intended. And welcome everybody. Looks like we're going to have some NFL press conference activity starting in a little bit. All right. Hey folks, those of you watching, you ever read the Atlanta Journal-Constitution? That man over there is D. Orlando Ledbetter, texting with the peace sign. He's one of the best in the business. Technically, around here, he's actually the best in the business. So there you go. Great to see you.
Thank you.
You got it. Man. Pretty good, man. Thanks. Yeah.
You bring up the audio station? Yeah.
Oh. All that flurry of activity, people coming in, press people coming in. So, matter of time.
We can use Steve Ledbetter's phone.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
For all of us.
Oh, yeah. It's just like here, it's like when I click on that. Okay, move the password.
Oh, it's not going to work there, is it? Now you might be wondering why I use this end and not the other, because the speakers here are better designed for ambient sound pickup, especially in situations like this. So if you see someone if you're using an iPhone, just a little tip: don't use the camera side. Use the front camera side. The sound is better. You'll get a better picture. You'll get a better result. Or I should say, you get better sound in the picture and a better picture too. This is designed for selfies, right? But it's also good for press conferences.
It's like these. Internet. You, it's like you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just testing. Still waiting. Energy time. Cool. Plug that. Plug that.
You're going about 2 minutes. Troy Vincent and Jeff Miller, about 2 minutes.
2 minutes for the first press conference.
We'll adjust that to 1 minute.
Yeah.
Troy still has his Wisconsin. So.
Hey.
Well, good afternoon, all. Hope everyone's doing well. So I'll just briefly walk you through what I covered with the memberships. Both myself, Walt, and Jeff working together today. So we began with just some general themes from the competitive side. Where are we after 6 weeks of play? Talk about 52 of our games have been decided by 7 points or fewer. That's most in NFL history. 68% of our games, that's 63 of the 92, have been within one score in the fourth quarter. I'm always looking at, one possession games. How, that really measures how competitive games really are. Can a team actually come back? Then we talked about scoring on the rise. I know that's a topic that comes up from week to week. Rich, Stephen are always asking about where we're at with points. We know that sweet spot is around 45 points a game, 44, 45. Historically, 47 is, where we want to be. Plays, passes, penalties, equal points. We understand what drives the fandom. We felt like after the conclusion of last night's game, when we look at points per game, we're at 44.9. So we're right at that 45. So the uptick is there. So we shared some points around just scoring. And then I'm still amazed week in and week out. 339 field goals this season. That's the second most in NFL history. Last year was the best we've ever seen. 77 field goals made 50 plus yards this season. That's the most in NFL history. So that, as many would say, well, the conditions are perfect. Kickers, are better. But that just is phenomenal seeing it's 50 plus field goals being made. Then we talked about, fantastic finishes. Then we got into replay. So we shared where we are at replay, and in particular, the 3 rule changes around replay, the expansion of replay assists. So Walt and I, we showed a little bit of video, just talked through where it's worked. And then we also shared, we had a situation in the Miami game earlier, where there was an intentional grounding call where we did properly assist in areas that we should have, and we use it as a learning opportunity for us internally, also with the crews. So we walked the membership through that, went into kickoff, and just kind of where we are with the dynamic kickoff, which we thought was promising. After 6 weeks of the play, they shared these specifically, 32% return rate, and that's what we look at return rate. Whether the ball landing zone comes out of the end zone, at the end of the day, it's a return kick. A year ago at this time, we're at 17% non-factor ceremonial play. We look at 40% return rate on deep kicks. 62 just was the highest. We had 62 return kicks just in a single week. That was the highest this season. And that's a 90% increase from kickoff returns at this point. Last year we had 160, now we're at 304. So, and then Jeff actually, which you would share, what was the overall objective? It was putting the foot back in the game, reducing the head injuries, as well as some of the lower extremity injuries, which is all promising. And then the start drive, which is critical points. And got the question earlier in the season by Club, why is the start drive? Why do you all keep emphasizing the start drive? Well, the average start drive now is 29.3. That's where you want to be. The why behind it links to fewer points, fewer punts, more touchdowns, more field goal attempts, higher points per drive, and fewer turnovers. So we know start drives matter. So went into a little bit of detail about that. Not of any questions from the floor, but that was a time that was spent, both myself, Walt, Rich, and both Stephen Jones and Rich McKay. We all were in attendance together sharing the membership.
Thanks, Troy. I'll just share a couple thoughts and then we can take questions, both of us. I gave a quick update on a couple of topics, preseason injuries, with a focus on kickoff as well as where we are this year. and within preseason injuries, the concussion numbers and the Guardian cap, which obviously was much in the news. So we can start with that. We saw another year where we had about a 50% decrease in concussions as a result of players wearing Guardian caps. So those player position groups that were mandated to wear the Guardian cap, which expanded this year, saw about a 50% decrease in concussions. The big headline here, which I shared with a lot of you the other day, is that we saw the fewest number of concussions that we've seen in any preseason since we've been capturing the data. We saw fewer concussions in practices. We saw the second fewest number of concussions we've seen in games, which yielded the fewest concussions we've ever seen. The total number this preseason was 44. That's down from 58 a year ago and down from 91 in 2017, so less than half, only 7 years later. Getting back to the Guardian cap, that was a contributor. In addition to the rules changes, in addition to the changes that have been made by the competition committee to practices, the equipment has improved. The Guardian cap yielded those lower concussion rates. We also saw in the preseason around 300 players move to position-specific or one of what we call the Guardian cap optional helmets. These are the helmets that tested at the top of the chart. We had 5 helmets introduced this year, which performed better than any helmet we'd ever seen in laboratory testing. And the early results on those helmets are lower concussion rates for the players who wear them. And so for those players who chose to wear them, we said that you didn't need to wear the Guardian cap because they performed at least as well, if not better, than a regular helmet, plus the Guardian cap attached to it. So the equipment advances led to the lower concussion rate. That was all a huge advance. We also take a close look at lower extremity injuries because, as you know, we introduced an acclimation period, a ramp-up period for our clubs 3 years ago. We continue to see tremendous savings from an injury rate perspective to the lower extremities, foot, ankle, knee, etc., hamstrings. Those numbers continue to be down 25, 30% compared to where they were just a couple of years ago. Last year, we saw that those savings pulled through the rest of the season. We didn't see as many hamstring strains, other strains. We saw overall last year a decrease of about 700 games missed by players, in large part as a result of that acclimation period. That was a huge benefit. And we saw that again this year, so we're optimistic for how the season will progress. Kickoff was obviously a matter of interest and one that we studied substantially. In the preseason, we had about 70% of kickoffs returned, which was up from 55% the previous year. Kickoffs are usually returned at a higher rate in the preseason than the regular season, so no surprise, but that number was still encouraging. We had modeled that we would see slower speeds, lower velocities, and therefore less impactful tackles and blocks based on the formation. That's exactly what we saw. We saw about a 20% decrease in the speeds of the players as a result of the formation. And as a result, we saw about a 30% decrease in the injuries on that play in the preseason. That was more or less as we had modeled it, so not a huge surprise. Early returns in the regular season, we know that that return rate is lower, as Troy just mentioned, although it hit about 40% this past week. Regardless, we have seen no ACL injuries, no MCL injuries, only 1 concussion through week 6 of the regular season on that play, which are substantial decreases from where we were just a year ago or the year before that, despite the increased number of returns. So we modeled the kickoff to attain 2 primary goals. One is more of them. Troy went into that, and we seem to be headed in a positive trajectory there, but also to try to limit the injury rate or make it more resemble what is a play from scrimmage. And we've seen benefit there both in the preseason and at least through the first few weeks of the regular season, we continue to see that lower injury rate. So it's optimistic there. A lot more work to do, a lot more study. The sample size is not tremendously large, at least at this point. But we did see that lower velocities yielded lower major injuries in the preseason, and so far we've seen that pull through to the regular season, just to this point. So I think that captures it on my summary. Happy to take.
Yeah, just a few more.
Please,
A
go.
couple of things I failed to talk about hip drop, covering the hip drop. We showed them examples. So we've had 7 hip drop tackles where players were held accountable, that we were able to identify where the tackle, all 4 of those elements were present. So we've had 7, and those 7 came in the first 5 weeks. So we haven't seen any of the last 2 weeks, weeks 5 and 6. The coaches and the players have been outstanding with sending in video whether it's their own club about a player making a tackle or something in another game. So we had 7 hip drop tackles in 6 weeks. Those 7 all occurred in weeks 1 through 5. Also in our officiating and replay, we did spend a good amount of time, Walt and I, just talking about crew consistency, because that was the charge and the mandate from the competition committee. How do we get crew 1 to crew 17, whether it's we call it pre-snap fouls, team foul, or live ball foul. There may feel like there's an uptick in the number of penalties, but we're just slightly up on what we call team club fouls. We're going to average about 6 club fouls or team fouls per game, and we're right around where we usually are with the live ball fouls from an officiating. Ball snap in play, right around 9. So historically, we stay around that 9.1. I think in 2020, we're around 8. So we did get into what we're looking for, the things that we're doing when we see outliers, and making sure that after good sample size, which 4 weeks, you get a real good indication of where crews are from foul count, incorrect calls, correct calls, missed calls, and then game administration in general.
Okay, we have mics on the sides. If we can begin questions. Looks like Jarrett Bell, do you have a question? You're taking a seat. Let's begin with Rob Motti.
Yeah, where's the open seat? That's the question.
Troy, you mentioned the 7 hip drop tackles that were called. Have there been some that you've identified that could have gone and been called that weren't? I know Joe Vincent had an issue with one that caused them to miss a few weeks.
So, and this is, again, having the rule in place has really been helpful. We haven't seen any flags though on the field, which that was something that we felt like that would occur. It's just so important that all 4 of the elements show up. Reviewing that after game, some of us have just a better feel and an eye for where those things occur. If there's not an unweighted and trapping of the legs, we got to stay away from it. But that's during the week, it gives us and many others the opportunity to evaluate. So one player's not penalized for something that didn't occur, and especially in real time when all things kind of look the same. We've tagged probably 22 to date that were questionable. But again, by the letter of the law or the rule, all 4 elements weren't present, so we had to stay away from them.
Well, Mark Maskey, Washington Post.
Probably 2 separate issues. First, on the kickoff, do you remain pretty firm and adamant that there won't be any in-season changes to the rules, major in-season changes like the touchback spot? And second issue on the scoring, we had, 2 seasons, the previous 2 seasons where scoring was down, seemed down in the early stage of this season. You mentioned it's back up to 44 something. But where do you think scoring is in terms of a health of the game perspective? Is that anything that you're concerned about, would look at from a rules perspective in the offseason, or do you think it's going to be okay?
I'll answer the first question first, Mark. We met as a committee after week 4. There was nothing that the committee or the clubs felt like we needed to do to make adjustments. It was pacing. Jeff and team are always looking at where's injury, lower extremity, head injuries, and then we're looking at return rate and what is happening. So the committee decided there was nothing for us to do to adjust for the kickoff, so that'll remain the same. Again, we'll continue to keep monitoring, but right now all indications are we'll just remain for what was put in place for week 1. The second question was scoring. We have to just we keep our eye on that now. What we're not acknowledging is you got some good defensive play. You got some good defensive ball playing. So when you look at what is happening, why scoring or explosive plays it out, sometimes it's okay to give credit to the defensive play caller and the defenders. You don't see a lot of yards after the catch, but we monitor it because we understand plays, passes, penalties equal points. So that's the fandom side, which generates the interest. But we'll keep monitoring it after the last 2 weeks with points, margin of victory, that is the increase that we thought. Again, you include the kickoff and the return yardage there, start drives, all that indicates that the points will be where we would like to see them traditionally. Again, that outlier, 20 and 21 were outlier years. Number of plays, number of passes, number of points, they were outlier years. So that bar, that standard has been set of here's where we believe that we should be.
Go to Kalen, ESPN.
Hey Troy, over the last few weeks, there's been an increase in penalties and fines for violent gestures for unsportsmanlike conduct. And I was wondering why there's this emphasis on that specific penalty when some of them have seemed like the players are making a first down gesture, and what you think of how that's being fined or penalized on the field.
Excellent question. And those policies, rules have been in place. That's one where we've seen players make the gestures of first down. All of those things, that's good, spontaneous. When you start getting into violent gestures, there's just no place in professional football for that. And as long as currently I'm in place, that particular rule and policy, I just think about where we are as a society. And we have fans and children tuning into the game. You can make the first down, big tackle, have spontaneous gestures, but the violent gestures, that's one, there's a policy. And I just don't think as a society where we are and what we're trying to represent, that just doesn't, and we've talked to the players, we've talked to the coaches. We're not trying to make it not for fun, but we also have a responsibility as professional athletes.
Brenda Williams.
And sure, one of the things that feels like has been taking points off the board are illegal shifts and illegal formations. It seems like there's been an uptick in that. Is that a focus during the offseason or in the competition committee meetings?
The focus on the offseason as it pertains to a legal shift or most is to make sure that we call it, which is interesting. When you sit back and you're now in March, April, and May, the emphasis from the committee, this really came from some of the offensive coaches. No shaving. If you see it, call it. And that's one of the things in that crew-to-crew consistency, what we focused on is the topmost level. Is a slight movement, a little bit of, all of those things that we look at, was he actually set, did you give him enough time? Those are the things that we look at, but then we've asked our officials for consistency purposes. If you see it, you have to call it. So some of those things are just people trying, as we all know, motions just trying to find out you're a man zone, who's going where. That's just, we call that window dressing in football. And players, those players that are astute, understand what's going on. You have to play through the movement, but this is where offensive players, you have to be disciplined. Knowing where you need to line up when it's time, when you're on the ball, when you're off the ball. We also, as a point of emphasis or point of clarification, was how much assistance are we giving the players? Am I on the ball? Am I off the ball? We're out of that business. You need to know where you need to get lined up.
Jeremy Fowler.
With these number of 50-yard field goals increasing pretty rapidly, when you project out, how do you think that affects how offense is played? And will it get to a point where kickers are just too good and it affects explosive plays? And so
Well, Jeremy, I have to go back and when you think about it. One would say, well, you have to give credit. They're better. Kickers are better. But when you look at the evolution of rule changes through the years, in particular on PAT, field goal attempts, with the protection of the center or the snapper, you look at the playing surfaces, you almost have a perfect scenario. No one's rushing, you don't have very, very seldomly do you see a bad snap. So everything's perfect for the kicker he should be accurate, is what we would say. But his leg strength to see 54, 58-yard field, and sometimes coaches aren't blinking, they're going for it. All of those things are, I think, they're positive, and they should continue.
Albert.
Yeah, so Troy, I know there have been a lot of teams that have used the touchback strategically here with the new kickoff rule. Do you anticipate, whether it's during the year, after the year, that moving the touchback point from the 30 to the 35 is going to be part of the discussion?
That it was a part of the discussion. Excellent question. It was a non-starter, and I think that would have been March, to have, because it was too punitive of let's say, not a penalty, but to have that start drive be at the 35 or the 40. There wasn't enough votes on the floor. So right now, today, we talked about that preseason wise, was you got three different starts. You got the 20, you got the 35, and you got the 40 balls kicked out of bounds. I believe that we have to consider all of those factors as we look at the future. Again, 1 year only rule. but what is best? And the coaches wanted the option. That was the most important thing. I want to have the option if I want to kick it through, that I'm not being penalized strategically because I want to kick a touchback. But yes, no question, that is one of the things I think will come up again next year.
Judy?
Troy, what is the goal percentage-wise of returns that you'd like to see?
I would say that 33, 35 is healthy. And the only reason why I say that, because I'm going back historically and I'm looking at, those years where 21 and 22, we were 37 to 33%. Anything over the 30%, I think is healthy. I think that's a healthy place to be, barring the injury data does not say that, what we're seeing, we should be making adjustments.
So if you make the tweak that would generate more returns, what's the percentage you're aiming to get to?
I have in my mind a football perspective on what the percentage should be.
Go ahead.
This is all being driven by player wellness. So we're not going to move and make a football decision if it's not in best interest on what we're trying to accomplish on the health and safety side. So I'm gonna let Jeff answer that question.
Thanks, Fred. I might actually answer the question. Where we are now with 40% of kicks returned this past week, what do we have, Troy? I think 11 kicks so far past the 40, or kicks returned past the 40, which is matching last year. Like, there are dynamic kickoffs, and 2 for touchdown, as I recall. But the 40% number and the 40% this past week and 32% over the course of the season is going to give us the amount of information we need to make that evaluation as to whether or not the injury rate is much closer to play from scrimmage, which is what the goal has been. So far, early returns are good, but those are early returns. If we continue at this rate of returns in the 30s, we will have enough data to take a look at those injuries and make that decision, and also to have an appreciation from the coaches as to whether or not that play is strategic and dynamic as it was intended to be. If you move it out to the 35, then the percentage of kicks returned is going to increase. We modeled that would probably get you into the 50s, possibly even higher. But again, those are strategic decisions that coaches are going to make over some period of time. So we don't know until we know. Sticking around where we are now in the 30s and even this week in 40 is going to be the right amount of information that we're going to need to be able to make a full evaluation as to where we go. And if the comfort level of the coaches continues to allow for the 30s into the 40s, I think that they'll have an understanding and be able to share with us, Judy, what they think the return rate will be if we will do that to the 35, because it's the first time around for them as well.
We'll go a couple more.
If I could just add one other thing, this goes back to the special teams question. I think also one of the elements that we have to continue to keep discussing, we've eliminated the onside kick for the right reasons. I think we have to have some discussion. Is there a way to reintroduce the onside kick where I don't have to, it's not a surprise onside, if I have to tell you what I'm about to do. That was a strategic play that gave teams a true opportunity. Today, the way it's set up, the way we're spread out, I think we need to revisit that. I think those are things that all of those elements come into play as we think about the special team play, in particular the kickoff.
Let's go Ben Fisher.
Troy, going back to the issue of the ever increasing field goal length and accuracy, I heard what you said. It's not a problem. And as a fan, it's fun to see these long bombs, but it's changing offensive strategy at certain yard lines so rapidly. I just wonder if you or the league or anyone on the committee thinks that is becoming something that would trigger other rule changes or other considerations, given to be how quickly some of those calculations are changing.
Ben, to date, I would say no. Data. And we would say, I think data is what has really changed the way offenses and how people are strategizing. I mean, you think about, you hear more about data says that you should go for in this situation. Data says that you should kick. We always felt like it's a feel. It's a feel. There's a feel. Data can say one thing, but the video is saying that he's getting his butt whooped, and we can't run that play. But data says you should go for it. So I think the data element, that also fits into, I got a good kicker, I got a clean look, I look good in warm-ups. going for 58-yard field goals, 60-yard field goals. So I think the data is driving for that.
Zach?
Oh, thank you very much. Has anyone looked at the type of plays called with respect to the outcome that we have a record number of close games? What I'm getting at is, since the advent of the internet, there's been a remarkable sameness in terms of what teams run and playbooks available online. But now you track them, and there are about 47 plays that each organization runs on a regular basis. Has anyone taken a look at that as a factor for why the outcome of these contests are so close? Thank you.
I haven't personally, but it's a copycat league. You know, most offensive schemes are very, very similar. There's a few that are just outliers. But for the most part, they're all running the same concepts. They're just window dressing, giving you a different formation, giving you a little bit of movement, but the players are ending up in the same location.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I ask one follow-up about the field goals? Have you guys made the connection between the touchback moving from the 20 to the 25 now to the 30, and that being the reason why we're seeing so many more field goals being made and more long field goals being made? Because then now the distance offense needs to go down the field is like 30 yards instead of 45.
It's been looked at, and I would just say, one of the things that was considered, we didn't get there, but there should be a bunch of different, touchback's a touchback. You know, you penalize the defense on a punt, ball comes out to the 20. That's a factor. And plays where the start drives, we believe that there should be some consistency with touchback, whether it's a punt, field goal, a kickoff, should all come back to whatever that determination is, whether it's a 30 to 35 or even a 40. So as we just think through it, we're always looking at those points, start drives, number of punts. How can you reduce the number of punts, which means you're having more offensive plays? So all those things are factored in. I'm really curious on how the competition committee, the future football committee, as they examine the data as they do every year, what they come back with thoughts of where is the rebirth, quote unquote, of the offense.
Jeff, I got one more on. Like I forgot to ask this, but with the Guardian caps, like what sort of feedback have you got from guys who are actually wearing them in games now? And are you guys seeing like a week over week uptick with the number of players that are wearing them?
Numbers are really small. So I think we've ranged from a low of 5 players to a maximum of 10. So you're talking a very small amount of information. This past week, I think it went from 10 down to 8 or something like that. We haven't spent a lot of time, and there's probably not a lot to gain given the individual instances. I think that the broader point, Albert, that's a good question, is when players have said, hey, I want to wear a Guardian cap in games, that's fine. But the helmets that I mentioned at the outset, the 5 that perform better than any others in lab testing are better, at least as good, if not better than a helmet that performs well plus a Guardian cap. So what we say to the players when they're looking to make decisions based on safety, which of course is a great cultural move for players, is the best thing you can do is to wear one of these helmets. You can wear the Guardian cap if you want, but it's a bit of a transitional technology because a lot of the benefits are already being incorporated in the newest equipment.
Yeah.
So wear the Guardian cap if you want, but if you want to get the best of the best, choose one of these over here. And so I think players are making that decision too. There'll be a lot to be gained from talking to players, I guess, the handful of players who are wearing the Guardian caps, but even more so for the players who are wearing the newest and best performing helmets.
So then, like, would you allow guys in camp to wear the helmets without a Guardian cap?
We did in fact. So that's what the rule was this year. So we took those 5 helmets that I said performed at least as well, if not better than, and we had in preseason 90-man rosters, 300 and some players choose to wear the best performing helmets, knowing that they didn't have that extra 10 ounces on their head from the Guardian cap, which made sense. That was a logical thing to do from a safety perspective. It made a lot of sense for us as an incentive for players to do it. And credit, by the way, to the Players Association for being hand in glove with us on this effort.
Let's finish with Deshaun.
Question.
Yeah.
This is player had multiple diagnosed concussions. Is the protocol, is the threshold to come back any higher, or is it the same?
The return to play protocol, which is published, you've seen it all before, based upon the best science, is still reliant upon a series of medically accepted steps and then signed off by an independent doctor, an independent neurological consultant. to make sure that the player is now fully recovered. And so the test that that individual, that doctor performs, and that the steps that the player has to clear to even get to that point are going to be the same regardless of whether he's had 1 or 2 or 3 concussions. What we want to make sure is that the clinical care, the people who understand concussion most, people with most experience in this space, the doctor who is treating that patient, is comfortable that they've recovered to the point where they can go back and play football. That doctor is going to consider whatever steps he or she needs to consider to make sure that they reach the conclusion they're comfortable with as a clinical provider of concussion care. And we're very comfortable that given all of the steps involved there and the independence of the doctors involved, we'll get to the best place.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll be back in about 1 hour. Thank you.
Okay. There you go. Be up back in an hour, folks. Press conference. And so I'm going to keep this going continuously. I've never done this continuous. I had it one stop, right? Everything else. But, you know, interesting though. I'd love to know. They're in the, hey, John, how you doing? John says, John, they're in the process of meeting about that right now. And I believe in an hour, that press conference will be right here. Yes. Talking about you, right? Yeah. An hour press conference will be right here announcing Tom Brady. So I'm going to leave my stuff here. I'm going to take me and my cane and move around, okay? So here we go. All right. Yeah. Unplug this. All right. Hey Jeff, how you doing, man?
Great to see you.
Great to see
How you been?
too. I've been great, man.
Good. You look well.
I'm getting a new hip in January.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I heard that is life-changing.
That's what I can't wait to run again. So yeah.
Good for
Hey,
you.
folks, Jeff Miller, head of communications for the NFL. Yeah. So great guy. All right. So what I'm going to do here is, hey Brian, thanks a lot. Thank you, sir. All right, so let's get over here. See what's going on outside, shall we? Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, we let her.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
Yep.
Okay. Right. It's a great press conference, folks. Rolling around. Okay. Thanks, guys. Hey, Poochie, you been fed yet? Oh, look at that face. He's so innocent. Oh, all right. Dog had that forlorn look on him, like, oh my lord. Okay, so go outside. You got any questions? Fire away. But I'm out here because just want to see who's around. We might be, interested in talking about stuff. But so everybody's eating. I know, boss. All right. Phew.
It's always like, take over.
Yeah. Like,
I think they're still going. Here comes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.